Faith Power, Chapter 5, Faith and the Subconscious. In the preceding section of this book, we indicated to you the influence of faith or confident expectation upon those faculties of the mind or those great fields or planes of mental activity, which are generally grouped under the classification the subconscious. In that presentation, however, we considered only those subconscious mental activities which are concerned with the preservation or the restoration of physical well-being. Faith, however, influences and directs the subconscious mentality in many other ways than in that of faith cure or faith healing along the lines of mental therapeutics, as you will see as we proceed with this instruction. The subconscious, that great field or plane of mental activity, is the seat of far greater power and the source of far deeper and broader streams of mental force than the average person even begins to realize. In that field or on that plane are performed over 75% of man's mental activities. Our subconscious mentality has well been compared to the great mountain-like elevations of land under the surface of the ocean, abiding there in substantial form and serving as a support and base for that which appears above the surface, though invisible to the ordinary observer. The islands which appear above the surface representing the important, though comparatively limited area and extent of the conscious mentality. Others with equal force have compared the conscious mentality to the comparatively small area of a mighty iceberg floating through the seas of the Arctic region, the subconscious mentality being represented by the far greater substance and body of the iceberg, which is submerged beneath the waters and which is invisible. Again, the conscious mentality has been compared to the comparatively small section of the light spectrum, which is visible to the human eye, which section includes the various light waves ranging from red to violet. The subconscious mentality being represented by that enormous field of the infrared rays on the one side and the ultraviolet rays on the other. Our mental world is far more extensive than we usually conceive it to be. It has great, comparatively unsounded depths and equally grand, comparatively unscaled heights. The explored and charted areas of our conscious mentality are incidental and subordinate to those broad areas of which even the brightest minds of our race have merely explored the borderland, the expanded, uncharted interior of the strange country, still awaiting the exploring expeditions of the future. Our position in relation to this great terra incognita of the mind is similar to that of the ancient civilized world toward the earth as a whole. We are as yet awaiting the Columbus who will explore the western continent of the mind, and the Livingstones and Stanleys who will furnish us with maps of the mental darkest Africa. Yet even the comparatively small explored areas of the subconscious have revealed to us a wonderful land, a land filled with the richest raw materials, precious metals, wonderful species of animal and plant life. And our daring investigators have discovered means of applying and using some of the wonderful things which have been discovered in even that borderland of the new mental world. The past 50 years have been very fruitful for the race in this direction. We have learned not only of the existence of this new land filled with wondrous things, but we have also learned so much concerning the nature of these things. And what is still better, we have learned much concerning the best methods of converting those things to our own uses. We have as yet much more to learn along these lines, but what has been already learned has revolutionized our conceptions of the mind and has opened up to our conscious use great mental powers, the very existence of which were formerly unsuspected. We shall not enter here into a detailed consideration of the fields and planes of the subconscious realm of the mind, nor into a full description of what has been found to abide in those regions. We have considered these matters and subjects fully in that volume of this series, which is entitled Subconscious Power, to which book we refer you if you are desirous of studying in further detail these subconscious faculties of the mind and the most efficient methods of applying and using them. In the present volume, we are concerned almost entirely with the consideration of faith power, and its effect upon the mind as a whole, the conscious planes as well as the subconscious. But inasmuch as faith power performs such a large part of its activities on the planes or in the fields of the subconscious, we find it necessary to make constant reference to the latter in our consideration of faith power. While it is true that desire is the motive power of all human action, conscious and subconscious, and that without desire, conscious or subconscious, there could and would be no such action. And while it is true that desire and will go out toward idea, and that without idea, conscious or subconscious, there would be no moving of the mind to action. Still, it is equally true that the measure of the degree and the direction of such activity is dependent very largely upon the degree of faith, confident expectation, or expectant attention manifesting in the individual. This is true concerning the activities of the conscious mentality. It is doubly or trebly true of the activities of the subconscious mentality. In fact, the subconscious mentality has been discovered to be very set in its beliefs and to hold steadfastly to them when once they have taken lodgment within it. So much so, in truth, that it will often balk and rebel when the conscious mentality strives to set it to work in opposition to its fixed beliefs and habits of action. It is often found to be necessary to re-educate the subconscious when it has been filled with erroneous beliefs and ideas before it can be set to work in a new direction, a direction opposed to its old beliefs and ideas. Certain fields, at least, of the subconscious mental activity, certain of the subconscious mental faculties, at least, remind the scientific observer very much of the mind of the child. That is to say, like the mind of the child, it is quite open to original impressions and quite disposed to exercise faith and belief concerning ideas presented to it, provided that those ideas do not conflict with those already accepted by it. But also, like the mind of the child, it will hold fast to these ideas when they have been accepted as truth and forcibly impressed upon it, and will find it difficult to accept or act upon ideas opposed to them. Like the child mind, also it readily forms habits of belief, thought, and action, and when these are once set, it requires much work to change them or to reverse their action. We have evidences of this fact in our everyday lives. You yourself can testify to its truth. Like nearly every other person, you have found yourself strongly influenced by silly, irrational, superstitious ideas, notions, and habits of thought and action long after you have thoroughly convinced yourself that such superstitions have no basis in fact or in truth. Your conscious mentality frees itself from the bonds of the superstition, but when you come to the test, you find within yourself, deep down in your mental and emotional being, a distinct, definite, and positive tendency to act according to the old belief or notion. You feel the pull of the subconscious upon your will, and it often requires the greatest exercise of willpower to overcome that subconscious influence. The subconscious mentality must be re-educated before it will cease to protest and pull against your conscious reasoning mind. You, in all probability, have still some pet superstitions, notions which your reason pronounces to be absolutely ridiculous in their untruth and lack of reality, which, when it comes to the pinch, cause you to feel quite uncomfortable if you attempt to act contrary to them. It has well been said that while we laugh at the pet superstitions of others, we hug close to those of our own which are equally ridiculous. We pride ourselves on our rational actions and our intellectual habits of thought and belief, but when it comes to walking under a ladder, sitting at a table with 13 persons present, doing things on Friday, breaking a mirror, etc., we show plainly the force of this old pull and influence of subconscious belief and faith. And if we act contrary to these, in spite of ourselves, we find expectant attention being directed toward the result feared by the subconscious elements of our mental being. It is amusing to those who are free from those particular superstitions and quite interesting to the scientific observer to note that so many intelligent, well-informed, rational persons will hesitate to return for some forgotten thing after they once have left the house, or that they will knock wood before having made some statement expressing success, freedom from trouble, etc., or that they will show visible concern and distress when they spill salt at the table or break a mirror or do something else which their subconscious mentality believes to be a hoodoo. As for sitting at a table of 13 guests, some of the very bravest and most intelligent will feel that it is all wrong and will sigh with relief when an extra guest is pressed into service to break the evil spell. Yet, in each of these cases, the person will frankly acknowledge that he has no rational or intellectual belief in the evil omen. He knows that there is absolutely nothing to it, but he feels queer about it. Nevertheless, when he comes to the point of flying in the face of it, these persons are like the man who said that in the daytime he absolutely scorned the idea of ghosts, but that in the middle of the night he believed implicitly in them. These queer contradictions of human nature are accepted as matters of fact by most of us, though they are usually regarded as beyond rational explanation. However, when the action of the subconscious mentality is recognized, a new light is thrown upon the subject, and the perplexing mental duality is explained, the two sides of the mental shield are perceived and known to be just what they are. But these hidden beliefs of the subconscious and its direction of action in accordance with them are not confined to those superstitions regarding unlucky things and evil omens. Quite as strong and quite as active are the subconscious beliefs and notions about lucky things and good omens. The principle is the same in each case, though the direction is opposite. Many very intelligent men secretly feel that certain things are lucky for them, or that certain things act as charms, bringing them success and good luck in their undertakings. Many a man has a sneaking belief in the efficacy of a horseshoe over the door, though he may pretend that it has been placed there just for fun. You will discover the strength of the subconscious belief if you attempt to remove the symbol. You would be surprised to learn how many otherwise intelligent persons carry lucky stones, lucky coins, or other charms held to bring success or to avoid the opposite. Not only this, but the subconscious entertains deep-rooted convictions and beliefs concerning the general success or non-success of the individual. The person who has constantly impressed upon his subconscious mentality that he is unlucky and that fate is always against me has created a tremendous power within himself, which acts as a brake or obstacle to his successful achievement. He has created an enemy within himself and which serves to hold him back and which fights against every inner effort in the direction of success. This hidden enemy hampers his full efforts and cripples his activities. On the contrary, the person who believes that luck is running my way and that things are working in my favor not only releases all of his latent energies, but also actually stimulates his full powers along subconscious lines as well as conscious. You have probably had the experience of feeling that things were going against you, and as a result, your enthusiasm and interest then burned very low. Later, you became convinced by some little circumstances that my luck is turned, and as a result, your spirit manifested itself in keener desire and determined will. If you have not had this experience yourself, you have doubtless perceived it manifesting in other persons under your observation. Many men have become so convinced of their propitious destiny that they have overcome obstacles which would have blocked the progress of one holding the opposite conviction. In fact, most of the men who have used their failures as stepping stones to subsequent success have felt within themselves the conviction that they would triumph in the end and that the disappointments and temporary failures were but incidents of the game. Men have believed in their stars or in the presence and power of something outside of themselves, which was operating in the direction of their ultimate triumph. This has given to them an indomitable will and an unconquerable spirit. Had these same men allowed the conviction of the operation of adverse and antagonistic influences to take possession of their souls, they would have gone down in the struggle and would have stayed down. In either case, however, the real something which they have believed to be an outside thing or entity has been nothing more nor less than the influence and power of their own subconscious, in one case pulling with them, and in the other pulling against them. The man with his subconscious filled with belief and faith in his non success and in the inevitable failure of his efforts. The man whose confident expectation is that of non success, failure, and inability, and whose expectant attention is directed towards such an outcome and the incidents and circumstances leading up to it, is like a man in the water who is swimming against the stream. He is opposing the strong current, and his every effort is counteracted and overcome by the adverse forces of the stream. Likewise, the man whose subconscious is saturated with the conviction of ultimate victory and final success, whose confident expectation is directed toward that end, and whose expectant attention is ever on the lookout for things tending to realize his inner beliefs, is like the swimmer who is moving in the direction of the current. Such a man not only is not really opposed by the forces of the stream, but instead has these forces at work aiding him. The importance of having the faith, confident expectation, and expectant attention of the subconscious directed toward your success, achievement, and successful ultimate accomplishment, and the importance of not having these mighty forces operative against you may be realized when you stop to consider that in the one case, you have 3/4 of your mental equipment and power operating in your favor. And in the other case, you have that 3/4 operating against you. And that 3/4 in either case not only is working actively during your waking hours, but also works while you sleep. To lose the assistance of that 3/4 would be a serious matter, would it not? But far more serious is it to have that 3/4 actually working against you, having it on the side of the enemy. This is just what happens when the subconscious gets into action under the influence of wrongly directed faith, expected attention, and confident expectation. The ideas, plans, inner suggestions, hints, hunches, and other strange mental states which are constantly rising from the depths of the subconscious to the surface of conscious thought are potent factors in the mental work, achievements, and accomplishments of the individual. To the man of hopeful, confident expectation, these point out the road to increased efficiency and progress. To the man of fearful, confident expectation, they point out the dangers, obstacles, hindrances, defeating influences, and the other things which paralyze man's will and cause his spirit to sink and his heart grow heavy with discouragement. The spirit, the soul, the heart of the man are colored by these subconscious influences, and in turn, they tend to provoke action and movement in the direction corresponding to the state of belief indicated by that color. The inner state manifests in the outer state. The ideal tends to become real. The materialization proceeds in the shape and form of the visualization. Expectant attention plays an important part in this manifestation of the faith and confident expectation of the subconscious. We have pointed out to you that attention is attracted to and drawn out by those objects and subjects which are the subject of its interest and belief, and that it ignores objects and subjects contrary to those. So true is this, that if two men of equal mental powers and intellectual efficiency were subjected to precisely the same conditions and set of circumstances, were caused to undergo the same general experiences, in fact, each might obtain entirely opposite results were their respective subconscious mentalities filled with opposite conditions of faith and confident expectation. The expectant attention of each man would cause him to perceive things which were imperceptible to the other man of equal mental power and intelligence. One would see the thorns, the other the roses. One would see the hole, the other the body of the donut. One would see only the things making for failure, the other the things conducive to his success. Each would see that for which he was looking, and would be looking for that which his confident expectation believed would be found, and to which accordingly his expectant attention would be directed. This is why one man would be able to say in the end, "And lo, my own hath come to me," and the other, "That which I feared hath verily now come upon me." But this is not all. In other books of this series, we have called your attention to the power of the mind to attract to itself the things of the outside world which are correlated to its thoughts. In the books Personal Power and Thought Power, respectively, we have gone into details concerning this subject, which is merely referred to at this place. That such law of mental attraction exists is now admitted by many of the world's most careful thinkers. It is no longer held to be a vague and fanciful notion held by a few visionaries. Whatever may be the theory held to be underlying it, and there are many, the presence and power of this law must be admitted by all persons. Its results and effects form evidence found at every turn, evidence which is valid and incontrovertible. This law of mental attraction, being mental in its essence and its form of action, must operate on all planes of the mind, and indeed has been discovered so to act. The mind has many planes of activity, and as we have said, at least 3/4 of its operations are performed below or above the plane of ordinary consciousness. The subconscious plays a most important part in the operation of this mental law of attraction. The forces under this law are largely set in motion and activity by impulses coming from the region of the subconscious. This being the case, you may realize how important it is for you to train, educate, re-educate, and direct your subconscious mental faculties, that they would be filled with the faith of hope and not the faith of fear, that your confident expectation may be directed forward and not backward, that your expectant attention may see the helpful things and not those which hinder and pull back. Get busy with your subconscious. Train it, educate it, re-educate it, direct it, incline it, teach it, suggest to it along the lines of faith in success and power, and not those of the faith in failure and weakness. Set it to work swimming with that current. The subconscious is much given to faith. It lives on faith. It acts upon faith. Then see that you supply it with the right kind of faith, and avoid as a pestilence that faith which is based on fear and is grounded in failure and despair. Think carefully and act.